From Akron, Ohio, this is episode 1 of On the Tropes. I'm your host, Nick, and today I'm joined by...
Sir?
And...
Kyle.
So, since this is episode 1, we'll give a brief breakdown of what the show is. Basically, we take famous tropes from movies, TV shows, literature, any storytelling device.
Comics.
Exactly.
Mm.
And we try to break them down, and then after that, we'll do a top 5 list about said tropes. And after that, we got into a different segment.
It'll vary from episode to episode,
Yeah.
right?
It will.
Yeah.
Listener feedback, interviews, games for you listeners, things like that.
Kind of whatever we feel like and you respond to.
Exactly. It's going to be very listener driven. But on this episode, we are talking about the trope of breaking the fourth wall. So before we break the fourth wall, what is the fourth wall?
I did some research, looked up some dusty old books I had, and I guess there used to be, it's just like a stage term, and it's just the term for the three walls of the stage and
Stage
the set.
left, stage
and then,
right, stage right, and
right,
the back.
and then of course
Stage back.
the audience looking. That's the fourth wall that the characters see that you don't.
Yeah, I feel like they do that a lot. They break the fourth wall a lot in theater, where a character will step out and every other character in the scene will be still, and they'll address the audience, which is really what breaking the fourth wall is kind of acknowledging that you are in whatever you're in, whether it's a book or you're in a movie or a TV show or something.
Right.
Breaking that fourth wall.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting how it's changed over the years. Like I guess Shakespeare used it all the time, and like it's
Directly
used,
addressing the audience.
Yeah, like Kyle's saying, it's like plays used it frequently. I noticed that like cartoons, like early cartoons, it was a big deal, and then in
like
movies,
Duck Amuck from Bugs Bunny is like one of the most famous cartoons where there's interactions where the animator is actually changing. You see their hand changing what's on screen.
And it's like, it's something that in movies is, I think, more prevalent probably later. It's more like, I guess it's more recognized probably later. And it's like, it seems like there's it happened a lot less in film.
In movies nowadays, how is it currently used as a storytelling device?
I think for a lot of the movies nowadays, it's used as sort of like a comedic device where you're like in Hot Tub Time Machine. When what's his name? I don't remember the actor's name. When
Craig Robinson.
Yeah, when he finally realizes that it's a Hot Tub Time Machine, he looks at the camera, and it's like that's all you really need is just it just adds to it.
Must be some kind of hot tub time machine.
But I think it's used to kind of draw the audience into whatever is going on in the movie. But for a lot of it, it's in comedies. I think it's mostly used in comedies.
Yeah, and I think comedies get away with it better because it does take you out of the movie in a lot of ways. Like it detracts from the story itself, but in comedies they can get away with it because it's funny.
Right.
And if it's funny, that's good
You're
enough.
in a less serious mood. You're showing up to laugh and all that stuff. I think one thing I thought was interesting too is that it's used a lot in media for kids, and like
Dora the Explorer.
Right. That whole thing.
Blue's
It's
Clues.
like it's a big deal when it comes to speaking to children, and I think it's just almost for the same reason as comedy. It's like they want it's more about interacting with the audience, having a good time. It's more about engaging them. Yeah. I think I just noticed because it's like, man, so many things I watch with my daughter now are they're
talking to her.
Right, exactly. It's like, okay, stop bossing my kid around.
What's weird is when you watch these things and you're not doing what they're saying, and they're like responding to you supposed to being like you saying something that you should be, but you're not.
Yeah. They're telling you that you did a good job for counting to 10, and you're like,
really, you've just been sitting there.
I didn't count to 10. You don't need to congratulate me. Aside from comedies, though, do we like how it's used?
My the latest example I could think of is the Netflix show House of Cards. Kevin Spacey. He talks directly to he breaks the fourth wall like every episode, and it's really interesting because not only that, when he's using his cell phone, it shows on screen the text that he has. Like it shows what his cell phone looks like, and then he talks to you.
The Mindy Project does that too, and I think it's kind of a funny like new device for TV shows to use. They have pop up. I haven't seen House of Cards, but on Mindy Project they have pop up, kind of like pop up video bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it's weird because I can't say that it's that suspension of disbelief though, man. It wears on me sometimes, and it's like even with like House of Cards, I noticed there's like a point where something happens, the character experiences something a little bit more dark.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of tells the audience, the camera starts to pull away. And he kind of like looks directly at the audience. It's like, you can't pull away now, basically. Like, you've been here this whole time. And to me, that's a little too much of the character being, because that makes Kevin Spacey's character kind of more than human. That makes him too...
almost godlike in terms of his relationship
show,
with...
even his relationship to the rest of the show. And it's like, I think sometimes it can be overused, and even though I will say that's a pretty good show.
I think in some ways well, actually, I before I say anything, I was kind of wondering, is that technically breaking the fourth wall? Having a narrator as one of the characters in the movie?
I think it depends on how it's done.
Like is it strictly just looking directly into the camera that is a breaking the fourth wall, or can it be audio because you're hearing something from a character who's acting in the movie, but they're obviously not talking in the moment there.
So there are different levels, at least on TV Tropes' website. They mentioned the different levels where there's something where it sounds like in House of Cards, if he's consistently breaking the fourth wall, they call that no fourth wall. And there are times where they're not quite acknowledging, where it's leaning on the fourth wall. But what they define as breaking the fourth wall, specifically the narrator or whoever in the show directly interacting either with the audience or the author. So Daffy Duck and Duck Amuck, or somebody actually acknowledging the audience directly. But I think a narrator itself, in most forms, is at least leaning on the fourth wall.
It's leaning on it. However, it's right on the edge of it, because it could just as easily be one character, and has oftentimes been one character talking to another character.
Like in Double Indemnity, it's the guy leaving a message for his friend, or in American History X, it's an essay that the kid wrote.
I think I think as a storytelling device, I think it's really effective if I think it's used sparingly. That's, at least for me, that's how I feel. And I do think, though, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do it. We talked about the cell phone thing. I think that is actually it's kind of interesting. It's cool. I mean, it just shows you with the new, with visual technology, there's new ways to tell stories. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's, like we said earlier, it's used comedically very well by a lot of directors. Mel Brooks uses it a lot. Woody Allen uses it. Yeah, Mel Brooks uses it, and
pretty much every movie.
Yeah, it's like,
as far as I can think of,
early comedies. Yeah, early comedies, it was constant.
Even the Marx Brothers used it
all the time.
Yeah, but in terms of non-comedic movies, I think it's used a lot to get across a philosophical point, like at the end of Holy Mountain.
Yeah, it's funny because it's usually used by like a comedian, like the innocent buffoon who's like the heart of the story, or it's like a trickster type character. Somebody like I'll bring it up again in my list, and it could also be like a wise character, a wise main character. It's like, I just think it's funny. It's always like a certain kind of situation or person, though, or a crazy person breaks the fourth wall a lot. If you guys have noticed, like somebody who's like supposedly like he's seen by the other characters as being out of touch with reality, and in fact he's the most aware.
Yeah, like I was saying in Holy Mountain, that character does kind of fit in with that. That paradigm of he is the spiritual, more enlightened, more intelligent one compared to the other characters, and not to ruin it, but I think that movie's kind of unruinable.
Yeah, exactly.
At the very end,
that's a good way to put it.
He tells the camera to go back, and
it's like basically real life awaits. It says real life awaits, and it's kind of been the whole message of the movie. Yeah, if you watch it, you'll know what we mean. It is pretty much unruinable, I think.
Yeah, and then Persona ends the same way by Ingmar Bergman, but it really has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, which is kind of weird. And also in Persona, the camera breaks down, like the film breaks during the middle of the movie, and there's this weird interlude. I don't really know what it means, but I think it's yeah. I don't purport to be able to see inside the mind of one of the craziest directors ever.
Yeah,
but I think it's interesting. At least, you know, it leaves a lasting impression.
definitely.
I do feel like it's an older trope. That's not really used in, like we say, newer movies, but I feel like it hasn't been used in the last, I don't know, 5 years, maybe 10 years.
Not really as much. You're
really
right.
well, besides Hot Tub Time Machine, I guess. But but even there, it's not used too much. It's just that. Is it just that one part? I think.
From what I remember, it's just that one moment. I got engaged during that movie, by the way.
Oh,
Nice, excellent.
It's a true story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't think of any good movies or any good examples for movies within the recent history that use it like within the last 5 years.
that have done it successfully.
But I know 3 of my favorite movies from last year have leaned on the fourth wall.
Really?
And leaned very heavily. So 2 movies that I like that open very similarly, Amour and Holy Motors, both start with a point of view of an audience from a stage.
Oh yeah,
And it's kind of setting the tone that, you know, this is a work of fiction. We're looking out at the audience. And then especially Holy Motors, you see the director, the actual director of the film, Leos Carax,
Yeah.
waking up in a bed and then walking out into that audience. But the other movie that one of my favorite movies from last year is Seven Psychopaths, Martin McDonagh's second movie. And it starts with a shot of the Hollywood sign, and it's instantly showing you that this is a work of fiction. And the first 2 characters you see are Michael Stuhlbarg and the other guy, and they're both from Boardwalk Empire. And you see them and you immediately think, oh, those are the 2 guys from Boardwalk Empire. They're big stars.
Right.
And they're only in that movie for that one scene. So it's kind of him showing it to you and then trying to tear it down. And he also does the Persona thing where the screen breaks in the middle of the film. And the whole movie itself is a movie by an Irish guy named Martin called Seven Psychopaths about an Irish guy writing a movie called Seven Psychopaths.
that reminds me of like in comics, the characters that use it. One of the most popular comic books characters from the 90s, Deadpool, the merc with the mouth. He constantly breaks the fourth wall. I mean, almost every issue he breaks the fourth wall, and he's also another character who's completely insane and is just able to do it because he's crazy and has some hyper awareness. And the readers apparently, I mean, they love that guy. Like they really, that's one of the characters that has been like all the Marvel movies, like some of the biggest like uproar has been from doing that character wrong.
Yeah, it does. I think that readers might like him more because breaking the fourth wall like that does involve you a little bit more, which is why I think they use it in kids movies and kids TV shows, is because it's a little bit closer of an interaction, so it feels like that it's not just some character in a show, it's actually somebody that you've at least in a or in a unidirectional way interacted with.
Which is interesting because now we're so interested in 3D movies and being completely immersed in these movies, and then you don't really see as much of that sort of addressing the audience in bigger movies, at least.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking too. Pixar has a history of like at the very end of credits and stuff, there's always outtakes. It's not quite the same as as breaking the fourth wall in the movie. However, it's still it's like they almost make up for it with the outtakes at the very end now for a lot of the movies, where it's kind of like, okay, it's been this big show, and they show. It's really funny to me to see 3D setups of like camera setups, like filming something. You know what I mean?
It's
like
that's almost like adding an extra.
Yeah, it's like adding an extra layer. It's like an extra universe has been created there.
Yeah,
like there's so little of a fourth wall that they're actually doing outtakes for something that they clearly don't have outtakes.
Right.
Like, realistically.
Yeah.
I don't think those bugs are actually falling down.
But for people who are actually really interested in the breaking the fourth wall, there's a really awesome video on Vimeo called "Breaking the Fourth Wall Movie Supercut." by Lee Singer, and it's like this 8-minute movie, and it has, I don't know, probably around 50 different movies, and it shows every one of them, and it's really edited. It's edited really well, and
Nice.
it covers probably a lot of the movies that we're going to talk about later.
Yeah. We'll post a link on the Facebook page.
Yeah,
That we will.
it's a really awesome movie.
Yeah.
Short.
Fourth wall, break it when you want. Learn the rules first, then just break the shit out of them.
Okay. That'll do it. That'll do it for our discussion of breaking the fourth wall. Coming up next, we have our top 5 lists of breaking the fourth wall moments.
I thought this tape was gonna be a conversation stimulator, man. I was gonna ask you for your top 5 records to play on a Monday morning and all that, and you just had to ruin it.
Well, we'll do it next Monday.
No! I wanna do it now!
Welcome back to the show. Since this week we're talking about breaking the fourth wall, we are doing our top 5 breaking the fourth wall moments. Kyle, what is your number 5?
My number 5 it's kind of a joke, but Muppet Treasure Island. Rizzo and Gonzo. That's his name. They're constantly breaking the fourth wall by just addressing the audience and whatever. And at one point in the movie, Rizzo actually gives a tour of the set of Muppet Treasure Island. And then Statler and Waldorf, of course, are in the movie, and they're sort of at the bow of the ship, and they just make fun of the audience for watching this piece of crap movie. So I just think that was kind of a funny moment. Sir, what about you? Your number 5?
My number 5 is from Superman the Animated Series. I think it's like one of the best series DC ever did after Batman. And the ending to a lot of the episodes is Clark Kent making a joke, and then sort of he like winks at the audience at the very end. And it kind of shows how badass Superman is, and it's like really accessible to kids. Superman's supposed to be the most emotional superhero that everybody connects with, and he's like talking directly to you, so you feel pretty good at the end of each one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Nick?
My number 5 is the end of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where the entire cast gets arrested.
I love that one.
It's just such a ridiculous. I feel like when they were making the movie, they couldn't think of a good way to end it. So they thought, well, let's just, show everybody getting thrown.
I love how it kind of alludes to just how ridiculous the whole movie has been. That these guys are basically getting arrested for all this craziness.
All right, Kyle, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Fight Club. The scene in particular that I really liked was when Ed Norton's character is talking about Brad Pitt's job at the movie theater, and he kind of explains cigarette burns, and while he does it, he points at the corner of the screen, and the cigarette burn pops up and everything. And I mean, Ed Norton throughout the entire movie talks to the camera and addresses us, but I think that scene in particular is kind of interesting.
I think that combines two types of characters that do it, kind of like the main character who is either wise or depressed. And
sometimes both.
Yeah.
Often both.
And the like the trickster being Tyler Durden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, sir? Number 4?
Number 4 is Last Action Hero. Pretty much this whole movie is about the fourth wall just essentially shattering in this kid's life. And after a movie filled with every trope imaginable, Arnold speaks directly to the audience at the very end. And in my mind, it kind of is implying that his character is much more dangerous than we imagined at first. And he may be like leaking over to our dimension and coming soon to your theater to crash through the glass.
Yeah.
So, Nick, your number 4?
Yeah, my number 4 is the end scene from Psycho. It's the monologue that Norman Bates gives. And he's not talking to anyone specifically, and he's not actually talking. It's just him thinking. But the entire time he's talking about, I wouldn't hurt a fly. He's looking into the camera, and then he smirks at the audience. And it really brings the audience into his mind. So,
I totally forgot that scene was in there. It's a really good one.
Yeah, I think that technically, I would
Yeah, I
consider
think
that
so.
breaking the fourth
Definitely.
wall, or at least leaning on it
Really
very
leaning
heavily.
on it, because I mean, it's designed just to kind of scare the shit out of you. Cause and back then, come on.
Yeah, especially
These
in
are the people
1960.
who threw up during The Exorcist.
All right, Kyle, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is actually Funny Games. Either version really, because they're pretty much identical.
Hilarious games.
Yeah, it's a hilarious movie. This movie breaks the fourth wall constantly. The two teenagers who are torturing the family, Peter and Paul. Paul winks at the camera several times, and then they also kind of address the audience as like being entertained by what they're doing, which is pretty sadistic and kind of makes you feel uneasy. Like the first time they address the audience as sort of them doing all this torturing to entertain us, it was kind of a really strange moment in the movie. And then also at one point, one of them gets shot, and the other guy picks up a remote and rewinds the movie so you can have a redo of that scene.
He gets shot, and you think, finally.
Where's the remote control? Where's that f***ing remote control?
Yeah. There's going to be a happy ending to this movie, but no, bad guys win.
Isn't Peter is the guy who talks directly to you during the movie, right?
I think they both.
It's
do.
mostly. I thought it was mostly him. That's the one that's aware. I thought
maybe they changed it. Did you see?
I've seen
watched.
both of them.
I watched the German one. Most recent.
I think that movie wouldn't that be almost like no fourth wall? Because he's
it does seem like it would verge on it. That's the tampering with the fourth wall is something that the director Haneke likes to use a lot.
Yeah.
He used it in a more, like I'd mentioned earlier, with him showing the audience from the beginning, or showing the stage in the beginning. And in Caché, some people interpret the tapes in Caché as actually being sent by Haneke to the character, rather than it being like multiple people within the film interacting with each other. So he's a really interesting director. He's a disturbing guy, but he always makes movies worth taking a look into.
But what I think what it does in this movie in particular is it just makes you feel a lot more uncomfortable, which this movie does the entire time. But as soon as it acknowledges you they're watching them do what they're doing throughout the movie, it just makes the movie a skin crawl moment. But sir, what was your number 3?
Number 3 is All the Children in the World Save Tinkerbell and Peter Pan. I just think that moment, and I'm pretty sure I had an old copy of the book, and I'm pretty much positive it's in the book also. I just think it's such a great moment. It really plays on what's so cool about breaking the fourth wall, and that's audience interaction.
Do you believe? Oh, please, please believe. If you believe, wherever you are, clap your hands, and she'll hear you. Clap! Clap! Don't let teeth die! Clap!
You know, and we've already touched on how powerful it is with children. Every kid, I mean, everybody remembers that. You know, who saw the movie, or like, wow, you know, he had to rescue Tinkerbell. She almost died. That's how.
Yeah.
You know, fairies are kept alive by the belief of children.
Mm-hmm. Does that happen in the Disney version too, or just that stage,
live action
version?
I don't remember. I know I saw the live action play one.
I don't think it
a lot
happens
more
in
than the Disney one.
Cartoon version, but
listeners, if we'll double check that, and we'll post that on the Facebook page.
But yeah, that's definitely a really
get
intense.
to save Tinkerbell's life. Yeah, it's so intense too. I like that, how it's like it puts pressure on the children who are watching it. You know, I don't know if you guys remember seeing it, you know, for the first time or whatever, and it's like, or if you've ever seen kids see it. Like, I've watched my daughter and like her cousins watch it, and it's like
they clap.
Yeah, they're like, oh man, we gotta like really get on this. They're like real serious about it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nick, you're number 3.
My number 3 is from the season finale of season 6 of The Simpsons, the episode Who Shot Mr. Burns, part 1. Mr. Burns gets shot in the gut by somebody. We don't know who at this point in time. At the end of this episode, the entire town is a possible suspect. Mr. Burns has injured Bart's dog. He's stolen oil from the school. He's snubbed Homer at work. He's robbed the educational system of Tito Puente. He blocked out the sun. So
he's the greatest villain ever.
So everyone has motive, and he gets shot, and the entire town is standing around. And Marge makes a comment about, I wonder who could have done it. Everyone in town could possibly have done it. And Dr. Hibbert says, well, I couldn't possibly solve this mystery. Could you? And he points at the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and then a split second later, Chief he's actually pointing at Chief Wiggum, and he says, I guess I'll have to give it a shot. It's my job, right? but
so it's like a fake breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, it's like a fake breaking the fourth wall.
It's also, which we'll touch on in another episode, lampshading, where he deliberately references that they are in that movie.
Yeah.
Or in this case, a cartoon series.
Yeah. What I like about that though is Hibbert pointing at the audience kind of reinforced, hey, why don't, like, this is something that you should all be talking about.
Right.
And I remember the summer of '95.
Oh, I remember talking about
What
it.
else was there to talk about
I
than
remember
Who Shot
talking
Mr. Burns before season
Right.
7 started? And then you find out who it actually was, and they threw in all these fake clues, like him pointing to the west and the south. And, like, maybe it's a W for Waylon Smithers. Maybe it's an M for Marge Simpson.
Dude, it was so awesome.
And they
I
gave
like how you touched on how they used it as like a marketing tool, because it did get all of us involved. I remember.
and it was brilliant.
Yeah, I remember all the kids talking about that. It's so funny.
Yeah, the Simpsons breaks the fourth wall a lot. This is one of my favorite instances of it. Probably my favorite instance of it. It's just a great show that broke so many boundaries, and this is a great example of them doing that. Kyle, number 2.
My number 2 is High Fidelity, which I think it would be an example of no fourth wall, because John Cusack's character is constantly talking to the camera. He was talking to the camera so much that we're almost, as an audience, made as another character in the movie, because he has conversations. He doesn't just say a line or two. He has full-on conversations with the camera, and it really just draws you in, and you feel really more connected with his character because he's addressing the camera. He's addressing the entire audience.
And he actually has pauses where it's like, I know what you're thinking about me. Like, I know I'm a scumbag. I know that you're thinking this thought about me because I did this terrible thing.
And then the whole scene with the what fucking Ian guy is just it's just so awesome, man.
Number 5 with the bullets.
I can't fire them. I hired these guys for 3 days a week, and they just started showing up every day. That was 4 years ago.
I think that movie does it better than Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I almost had that movie on my list, but I don't know. I just think that it happens more often in this movie, that it and his conversations are just more genuine, that it gets away with it. So
I would agree.
Sir, what's your number 2?
My number two is John Constantine, the Hellblazer from DC Comics. Basically, he's an occult detective, a con man, the magician. He's arguably the most powerful magic user in DC Comics. He has no real superhuman powers. He just has, he has no costume. He just knows some magic tricks. He's really good at prepping things, and like he has this thing where people tend to like die around him. And occasionally he breaks the fourth wall, and I think in the case of his character, it's really cool because it's meant to show how powerful he is in his own universe. That, he's this, basically he's like an occult, character. So his whole, everything behind his character is knowing things that other people don't. And he's aware that they are in a comic book and that this is all going on. He seems to have some control over it. So I think that's one of, for this list, I was trying to think of non-comedic times that it's used, and it is in this case directly used to make a character seem more powerful, and it really works. He's such a cool character too, and also the creator, one of my favorite comic book writers, Alan Moore, has claimed on several times to have met him in real life, like in random moments. And Alan Moore is like he's into like the occult and has all the stuff like that. So it's just pretty interesting. Again, marketing.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, folks. Marketing. However, very good marketing.
All right. My number 2 is, Kyle touched on the same characters or same group of characters in his number 5. My number 2 is the Muppet movie. Muppet movie from 1979, when Kermit and Fozzie meet Dr. Teeth and his band, the Electric Mayhem. They start describing all the adventures they've been on that led him up to that point, and Kermit stops Fozzie and he's like, why are you re-going through everything we've already done? You're going to bore the audience. And they look at the audience and he's like, well, how are we going to tell them? And they hand him a copy of the screenplay.
Listen, see, Kermit here, he was living in the swamp, Fozzie, and then a fisherman came along.
Fozzie, you can't tell him the whole story. You'll bore the audience.
Oh, sorry. But, Kermit, the band here wants to know.
Well, let him read the screenplay.
Ah, yes, sir.
And the screenplay actually acts as another very famous trope, Chekhov's gun, because it comes into play later when the gang are stranded in the desert. They need help, and the only way that Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem know to find them is that they still have the screenplay, which came into play earlier in the movie. So they just read ahead, and they know where to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
So I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's a trope that the Muppets used all the time, constantly throughout their movies, their shows, even in the newest movie,
Muppet
the Jason
movie.
Segel movie, The Muppets. They use it constantly, and it's hilarious. It's just part of their whole goofy, absurd way of telling stories.
Yeah. And to kind of continue on how effective it is with kids, like I just watched that with my 6-year-old daughter for the first time, and I mean, she of course loved it. Loved it.
Yeah,
I had no doubt.
Yeah, and I watched it recently, and there's so many, because I hadn't seen it in maybe 10 years. There's so many things that you don't get as a kid, even though there's all that, very kid accessible dragonfly ripple ice cream. But then when they get to the end and the producers, Orson Welles, like that's
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's something that just didn't hit me at all when I was a kid.
Right, and it's something that only like you have to be an adult to know why
Yeah.
that's so funny. It could have, it's yeah, Orson.
All right,
Oh man,
Kyle, what is your number one breaking the fourth wall moment?
My number one is Spaceballs, which also does it pretty constantly. And there's a part where I don't know why they go back to the movie, but at one point they need to figure out where Lone Star is, and they take the Spaceballs VHS off the wall
They
and
fast
put it
forward.
in, and then they fast forward, and they're recapping the entire movie that you've already seen, and then they're actually in real time, and they're like acting in front of the movie itself, and it's really funny.
I love when they fast forward and it's the part where Dark Helmet.
It's like, fast forward, never show this again. Yeah, it's like,
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
and
and
I love
then
that character.
and then when Yogurt is selling all the Spaceballs merchandise,
Yeah.
the Spaceballs the flamethrower,
Yeah.
Spaceballs the lunchbox,
Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
and
It's so dead on.
and then at the end when Lone Star and Dark Helmet are fighting, I think one of them takes out a gaffer. And they like slice him in half or something. It's just really funny. The whole movie is just hilarious. And I think
when they chase him down and they catch the stunt doubles.
oh yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, I just think Mel Brooks knows how to do the breaking the fourth wall so well.
Yeah.
And we said earlier that he does it constantly, and this is probably his best movie where he does it. So, yeah.
Do your loans or your Dark Helmet for the listeners. If he was drinking coffee.
Oh yeah. Too hot. Too hot. I thought you were saying, you fell for the oldest trick in the book. Fooled you. Awesome. Good movie. What about you, sir? What's your number one?
My number one is Eddie Murphy. He looks at the audience in Trading Places, 1983, directed by John Landis. He has a scene where the main characters are explaining to Eddie Murphy, how pork works in stocks, and they're like, "Yeah, pork, as you would find in a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich." Like he's an idiot, and he kind of like hears it, pauses, looks directly at the audience, and it's so like it's used so sparingly. And it's the only time it ever happens, and that's what makes it so funny, because it kind of touches on the whole point of the film, that they think Billy Ray Valentine, the character, is this complete buffoon, and in fact, he's like this trickster. He's kind of hyper aware, and it's pretty cool. It kind of, I think it made me think of how the trope wasn't used as much back then. Like they tried to use it like very like just in like small moments where it would have the most effect. I think that's what I liked about Hot Tub Time Machine, to talk about
It's
it.
that
An earlier
one
one
lone
is,
moment.
it was just that
That's it.
one
Yeah.
moment, and I kind of think that he was referencing Eddie's performance in Trading Places with that.
We are commodities brokers, William. Now, what are our commodities? Commodities are agricultural products, like coffee that you had for breakfast, wheat, which is used to make bread, pork bellies, which is used to make bacon, which you might find in a bacon and lettuce and tomato sandwich,
So yeah, that's mine. It's the first one I remember, and it was also my dad. I remember my dad when we watched it telling me what the fourth wall was and how funny it was that he broke it. And Nick, your number one.
My number one is from, it makes my top 10 favorite movies of all time, the Oscar-winning Best Picture, Annie Hall. The scene specifically, though, he does it a lot throughout the movie, but the scene specifically is when Annie and Alvy Singer are standing in line. I think they're in line again for The Sorrow and the Pity, which he's seen a million times. And they're trying to have a conversation. There's a guy bickering behind, or not bickering, but
he's reviewing a movie or something.
He's
a pompous.
Yeah, he's assaulting a woman with his thoughts about Fellini and Samuel Beckett
in a really floofy way, just like big words, just like
so like wanting to be highfalutin and just infuriating. And Alvy Singer just stops and he's like, "What do you do when you have somebody in line behind you like this?" And the guy gets into it with him. He's like, I teach a class at Columbia. I think I would know." And he's like, "You have no idea what you're talking about. Let me grab Marshall McLuhan. He's right off camera right now." He grabs Marshall McLuhan. He says, "You have no idea. Like, you misinterpreted everything I said. You mean my entire fallacy is wrong. How anyone lets you teach a class is beyond me." And Alvy says, "Wouldn't it be great if real life was like this?"
Yeah.
And it's just such a typically silly Woody Allen moment. It's so funny.
Really, I happen to teach a class at Columbia called TV, Media, and Culture. So I think that my insights into Mr. McLuhan, well, have a great deal of validity.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny because I happen to have Mr. McLuhan right here. So yeah, just let me come over here a second.
Oh,
Tell him.
I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Boy, if life were only like this.
Yeah, I feel like he's up there with Mel Brooks with doing it a lot in his movies and really well.
He really does, and especially in Annie Hall, he uses a lot of different methods of storytelling. He uses the split screen. He uses the flashbacks where they're looking at themselves in flashbacks. He uses the cartoon device, but I think my favorite device that he uses throughout that whole movie is consistently, repeatedly breaking the fourth wall.
Annie Hall is hilarious, and Woody Allen has directed many films.
This is true.
Good point.
Yeah, not all of them work as well as others, but I think Annie Hall is definitely the pinnacle of the Woody Allen directions.
Next to Ants.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't direct Ants, but Ants is good.
He didn't direct Ants?
He didn't direct Ants.
Wow. Okay.
It's like the first. I think it's the first movie that he acted in that he didn't direct since 1969 or something like that. I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's something like that.
Wow.
All right, so those were our top 5 breaking the fourth wall moments. Listeners, we'll have a poll up on our Facebook page. You can vote on what
pull-ups, like the things the kids wear,
or will we have like a pull-up,
like on a bar,
of a guy doing a pull-up,
like on a bar.
I said
like
pull.
Rocky
will
style.
The audience have to do pull-ups? Audience, we need 20 pull-ups for each of you.
This will be the first and last episode of On the Tropes.
How about 20 pull-ups from me? That works.
So go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/onthetropes. Vote in the poll for your favorite breaking the fourth wall moment. And join us after this, where we will have a game. A little fun for Sir and Kyle here, and maybe a little fun for the audience as well.
This is your game, Nicholas, and welcome to it. I'm here to let you in on a few ground rules. You receive the very first key, and others will follow. You'll never know where you'll find them or how you'll need to use them, so keep your eyes open.
Welcome back to On the Tropes. This week we're going to introduce a new game called Trivial Pursuit. So I have 6 works of fiction that employ either breaking the fourth wall or those that have no fourth wall at all. Between Sir and Kyle, they will get a clue. They can guess for 3 points or pass to the next opponent, at which point they can guess or get a hint for 1 last point, or they can pass it back, and then the other opponent can get 1 less point.
So for every new
clue,
you get one less point.
Exactly.
That's about it. Cool.
So the categories are comedic film, dramatic film, TV, animation, video games, and literature. Sir, you will go first. Kyle.
How do we decide that?
Do we want to do a coin flip?
No, that's cool. I'll let you go first.
All right, Kyle, you pick his category.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dramatic film.
All right. For 3 points, this film's director is the only person to have won 2 Palme d'Or awards at the Cannes Film Festival during this century.
Wait, does that have to do with breaking the fourth wall?
Correct.
I'm just gonna guess randomly.
You'll lose 3 points, or Kyle will get 3 points if you're wrong.
That's cool. I'm good with that.
I'm passing to Kyle.
All right, Kyle.
Yep.
For 3 points, this film's director is the only person to have won 2 Palme d'Or awards this century at the Cannes Film Festival.
I want another clue.
All right, for 2 points.
Yep.
This film is from both 1997 and 2008 when it was remade.
I'll give it to Sir.
All right, sir. Any
I
guesses?
mean,
Really? I thought you knew. I was giving it to you because I thought you
kind
knew
of
it.
figured it's not Funny Games, is it?
No.
2 points to sir.
Are you serious? It's Funny Games. I'm like, wow.
Wait, what did you say?
That's why I said it
what was
was
the first year?
That's why I said it was nepotism because I'm
97
like,
and
you
2008.
just completely threw a point, 2 points to your bro, and then Kyle, you did not pick up on it, my friend.
All right.
I think the first one came out in 98.
97?
98.
The internet says 97. And
So,
from what I know about the internet.
Well, it's
Okay,
never-
well,
it's
I
never
need
been wrong.
to...
All right. Sir,
I need to do some research.
pick the next category for Kyle.
Literature.
Kyle, for 3 points, this 1973 novel, which features many of the author's sketches throughout its pages, was made into a relatively unsuccessful movie in 1999, starring Bruce Willis and Albert Finney.
Relatively unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I'll give it to Sir.
Any guesses?
No.
All right. For 2 points, the protagonist is Kilgore Trout, who also appears in the books God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, Slaughterhouse 5, Timequake, and Jailbird.
12 Monkeys?
Incorrect. So that's 2 points to Kyle. The book is Breakfast of Champions.
Awesome.
Wow. And yeah, the 12 Monkeys was just a completely blind guess.
All right, Kyle, since you got the point, you pick the category for Sir.
Albert Finney. Interesting. What were the remaining categories?
Comedy.
I'll choose
animated?
video games. No, wait, but I want that to be available for me later.
Alright.
What are the other ones?
TV, comedy, or animated?
TV.
TV. Sir, for 3 points, this TV series aired from 1989 to 1993 and commonly showed its main protagonist directly addressing the audience on screen.
If I guess an actor that I think was in it, does that count?
You can guess all the actors you want. It won't get you points. But it won't cost you points.
Michael J. Fox?
Wait, you can't say if
I
it's
can't say yes or no.
Oh, okay. Well, then fuck it. I'm passing to Kyle.
All right. Kyle, do you want to guess or you want a second clue?
I want a second clue.
It had spin-offs called The College Years and The New Class.
The Wonder
Are you
Years.
serious?
Wrong.
That's like
Oh.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Saved by the Bell.
Who cares?
Oh.
I like how you thought Wonder
I like-
Years also.
Yeah,
Because I was thinking...
I like Kyle's response to the wrong guess.
Who
It's like,
cares?
fuck that.
All right.
in it to win it.
Sir, you pick the next one for Kyle.
I'm gonna go video games.
Nice. I better get this on the first try.
This action game from 1997, released initially for Microsoft and PlayStation, was the first of many sequels to the highly successful game originally released in 1996.
I'll just give it to Sir. He probably won't know the answer.
And you are correct. I do not. All right. Second clue.
This game, created by Core Design, features an English archaeologist as its protagonist.
Missed?
Wrong. It was Tomb Raider 2.
Get the fuck out of here. Who gets that wrong?
Yeah, I wouldn't have got that right either.
You would have gotten it after the last clue.
Does it involve a busty protagonist?
Right. Who
Pretty
was
much.
a former ambassador?
I actually just played the news
that
Tomb Raider.
should be part of. That should have been part of it. You didn't think of something as obscure.
The word busty would have made it to the first clue if you guys would have gotten down there.
Are you going to say how it broke the fourth wall?
We'll hear a clip from it right now.
Don't you think you've seen enough?
She's taking off her clothes, and the camera pans up, and she says,
Dude,
"Don't
that's
you?"
so obscure.
A little bit.
And then she shoots a gun at you.
That was my gambit, though. That Kyle wouldn't know either.
All right.
And it turned out I was right. So who got points?
So I got points for that.
Yeah, Kyle got points for that because you
Fuck.
guessed missed.
Woo!
All right, sir, you pick.
I think. Has anyone gotten a question right?
Who's gotten point?
Sir got
Kyle's
funny
winning,
games.
right?
It's tied 4-4.
Wow. Comedy or animated?
Mm-hmm.
Comedy.
From 1980, this movie was voted number 10 on the American Film Institute's list of 100 Years, 100 Laughs.
Annie Hall.
3 points to Kyle.
My other guess would have been Ferris Bueller.
So I tie for first then.
Wait,
I can't.
No, you're winning.
Was Annie Hall?
Oh no, but I can't lose.
When was Annie Hall? I figured it was like 79. Fuck.
79?
Yeah, that's
that
why I guessed
sucks.
that.
I would have guessed Annie Hall too. Actually.
That's why I guessed that.
Hold on.
Most of all, it takes respect. And I can't live with the man I don't respect.
What the fuck is that?
What a pisser.
I wouldn't have guessed it then. I have no idea what that is.
What a pisser.
Nice.
That was the number one clue for Airplane.
Nice. Very nice.
What was the second clue for that?
Second clue was this film was titled Flying High in many
I
foreign
would have
countries.
got that.
All right.
Damn.
So Kyle leading with 7 points.
Animation, sir.
Obviously picking the last category.
Take it
Animation
away.
for sir. So sir for 3 points. This animated film for 3 points and the tie.
For the tie.
This animated film from the latter portion of the 20th century inspired a Broadway musical which has won 6 Tonys, including Best Musical, and is now Broadway's 7th longest running show.
Oh.
I mean,
Oh,
I
come
know
on.
what Kyle's guess would be.
This is for
Oh
a
wait,
tie,
it wouldn't
sir.
be my guess. Latter point of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
So latter point as in the last. Okay.
So like
anyway,
basically 50 to like to the 2000s.
so that's not.
It's a broad
your gu-
range.
That's not your guess then, sir. Just guess it.
I mean, who wouldn't guess it? I can't think of when that happens in this movie though.
Wait, when what? Oh,
When they break the fourth wall in this movie.
It's only one particular scene.
I have to go.
I
to the
bet you it's.
bathroom,
I bet you
so
it's
The Lion King.
I bet you it's Timon and Pumbaa, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not in front of the kids.
Excellent.
That's it.
Of course, that was like the easiest one. Thanks, Nick.
Jesus.
Tied game. I like that we first episode ends with a tie. It's fun. It's
Yeah, I
familial.
can go with that.
Did I get any questions right on that? I did not get a single question right, and sir got 2 right.
You would have got an Airplane right though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have.
Okay.
Tomb Raider was disappointing.
It was. Come on, Nick.
And I couldn't believe I was 1 year off of Annie Hall because I thought like 1980. I'm like, fuck, I know Annie Hall was like right around then.
But Airplane is much more funny than Annie
Yeah.
Hall, I will say.
That's not true.
What?
Right. So
What?
So since you guys got to play the game, here's a game for the audience to play. And speaking of Annie Hall, their clue is this Woody Allen film, which features a movie within a movie, which breaks the fourth wall, was partially inspired by one of my favorite silent films, Sherlock Jr. That is the audience's clue. Email your guesses to onthetropes@gmail.com. We'll pick a winner at random from the correct guesses in the next few weeks, and you will either get to choose a trope or a top 5 list for an upcoming episode.
Sweet.
Do you guys know the answer to that?
No.
It's a toughie.
Yeah, I know it.
All right. But you don't want to say it.
Yeah, I just don't want to say it. I
All
know
right.
it.
Oh yeah, I
though.
know too. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So that was attempt 1 at a new game called Tropes Veal Pursuit. And that was episode 1 of On the Tropes. You can check us out on Twitter @OnTheTropes or on Facebook at facebook.com/OnTheTropes. Or like I just said, you can email us with criticism, possibly, supportive feedback,
Yeah.
absolutely, at onthetropes@gmail.com. So as always, I have been your host, Nick, and we have been...
Sir.
Kyle.
And we will see you next week when we are again stuck on the tropes.
Mother of mercy. Is this the end of Rico?
From Akron, Ohio, this is episode 1 of On the Tropes. I'm your hope, Nick.
Fuck. You're the Great White Hope.
Right.
This is not going
The
well.
Great Gold Hope.
The Olive Hope.